Hi friends! So, today we're going to talk about another unit guide, and this has been, the hot topic or the hot unit that has been coming out of the EWS, and that is Hoyan. Now, if you guys remember, when I was talking about who to pick for Hoyan and Holden, I said get both, right? One copy, because you don't know when that unit is going to shine in the meta. And lo and behold, Hoyan is now super important. I don't know who got baited by the community or, the main court when they say, oh, Hoyan's trash, the damage multiplier is kinda ass. Well, brother, did you tofu her up? You probably didn't. So, whoever we got baited by that, that's unlucky, but we're gonna talk about what Hoyan is today. Alright, so let's get into the archives where she is fully skilled up. Alright, and we can see that Hoyan is a green unit. Alright, a DPS, we know that she's a DPS. We can look at her prowesses, right? You can see that she gives crit rate, crit damage. Not that we are ever going to use this, alright, because it's her due. But what's more important is her skill ups. So let's look at the skill up. You can see that her S3 here, we have the speed here. And we know that Hoyan is all about her S3. So if we look at this skill ups here, we have increased damage multipliers, we have damage boost increase like Victor, then we have another damage multiplier increase, and then the reduced cooldown. Now, this is a 3-turn cooldown from a 4-turn if you get the last skill up, and this is so important because when you are thinking about pairing her with like a Lily, for example, this means you can back-to-back S3, and that is very, very strong, okay? We have to know what Hoyan does. And her all of her passive is what makes her very, very important. Basically, every time she uses her S3, right? Each time the passive effect is fully triggered after casting execution rights or reviving an ally, Hoyan gains 1 stack of fleeting glance up to 3 times. And fleeting glance at max skill gives you 40% attack. So for example, if let's say you're using her to counter cleave, for example, and you actually kill something, revive something, that's 2 stacks. That is 80% attack boost for your S3 that you haven't used yet because her turn's wrapping about. And when she comes onto, her turn, an S3, that's 120% attack boost that she's going to get. Her S1 is going to nuke things to oblivion. Okay? So, how would you skill her up? First things first, you need her S3 to be maxed. Right? She's a DPS. It's the same like Messiah. If you don't max his S3, he's also kind of hot garbage. Same thing with Hoyan. Hoyan, if you don't max her S3 up, she's kind of, not there. Her damage is not it. Okay? And that's what a lot of people were complaining about. Oh, I don't want to invest tofus. Well, you kind of have to. Alright? This is the whole point of the entire game. It's the long game. Right? 3-turn cooldown, super important, especially when you're playing, compositions where, she's going to be there for a longer period of time than just, proccing a passive and then pressing S3. This becomes super clutch, alright? Getting an extra 15 speed here means that you don't have to run her extremely fast, or your gears can actually allocate the gear scores to damage instead of to speed, alright? That's very important. This is where you get her 10% damage boost, which is quite important, and this is where you get your 450% extra damage multiplier from 400, okay? Super important, super, super important. Then we come down to the S2 here, and the S2, we can slowly get this up, alright? Don't forget, you also get 20% crit damage here, which also helps her damage multipliers, right? Because you're adding more crit damage multiplier to her damage. At the end of the day, making this a 4-turn proc is quite impactful. Because if she survives for 3 turns to S3 again, chances are she's surviving 4 turns because she's nuking units down one by one. She's sniping them down one by one. Okay? I'm going to say that she's going to need this as well. Alright? Maybe not the last skill up. Maybe 4-5-5 is all you really need on her. 4 on the S1, 5 on the S2, 5 on the S3. Okay? So, this is important. Damage multiplier. Right? Don't forget you also get, an extra 15% attack plus 100 attack here. That's a good amount of attack. And that is how I would build her, alright? 1, 2, 3 tofus here, 4 tofus here, 4 tofus here. So all in all, you're gonna need 11 tofus eventually to level her up. But the skill priority will be S3 into S2 into S1. Okay, same thing like Yelly, same thing like Messiah. You're gonna do all the same. You're gonna do all of that sequence the same. Now, how did I build her for myself? Let's look at mine now. Okay, so this is my Hoyan. You can see that I am running Onslaught, Fury, Fury Edge on her with, you know, plus 90 speed. The crit rate, I'm trying to get this to 100% crit rate. Ideally, you want 100%. You don't ever want to, you know, play anything less than that, because if it's not 100%, it's 50-50. And I have PTSD from crit rates, okay? It cost me the EWS qualifiers, and I'm never doing that again. But I'm trying to find, you know, a piece that can give me a bit more crit rate. At the moment, I don't have that. Waiting for the next 2x to farm Terramaton so that I can find it in my Onslaught pieces of Fury Edge. Crit damage, I'm going to get another 20% here because as you can see my prowess, I am currently at 5 here and 1 tofu here. Eventually I'm going to get this 20 extra crit damage, which is going to bring this up to 139, right? So this will be another 20% here, would be 289% crit damage. That's pretty good. I have almost 4k attack, which is what you want from her. You want her attack to be super high. And the reason I'm doing that is because her crit rate is not 100% yet. Okay? And just in case, in the off chance, let's say you're facing, let's say, a Kachi that hits an S1 on, you know, your Hoyan and puts crit rate down, at least my attack's high enough so that I can still do significant amount of damage, because don't forget that she's going to get a good amount of attack boost off her passive from Fleeting Glance. And so if I don't get the chance to, you know, use my crit damage multipliers to multiply my damage, at least my attack is still high. Alright, that's why I went with this route. Fury is just basically, if I crit, I'm going to do more damage. That's what Fury does, right? When an enemy lands a crit, the damage result increases by additional 12%, something you want to see from her, because if she can hard nuke a unit, that's when Hoyan becomes super scary, because don't forget that she's also an anti-revive unit. Okay? For her shell, there are 2 ways you can build her. One way is like me, where I run her on Law of Silence with insane effect resistance from Insight, alright? Coupled with the fact that Void also gives you a 60% F-Res already, so naturally, I already have 120 F-Res on her. There is a chance I'm going to resist shit, alright? I'm not going to get slapped, there's a chance I'm not going to get frozen, there's a chance I'm not going to get silenced, all that good stuff. Plus, she can't be targeted because she's in Void state. So I run her on Law of Silence for that first reason. The second reason is because you can read here, right? Reduce, cannot be targeted manually, and reduce group damage taken, which is AoE, by additional 50%. What does that mean? That means Messiah, if Messiah is the sole damage dealer or the first damage dealer to do AoE, I don't die. And if Messiah cannot kill a Hoyan, Hoyan is scary as fuck. Okay? That's why I run her on Law of Silence. Alright? Her main weakness is that if you don't run her on, you know, Bulwark, which is immunity, she can be, you know, a cooldown reset by, let's say, a Lily, a Holden, that kind of stuff. You don't want that. Okay? And you can see that I have Shadow Dash here. If I'm with this crit rate, which is something some people can do as well, I would have 100% crit rate, but I cannot get rid of this. I just cannot part with it. This is way too much gear score in my opinion. Okay, and then overclocking is your first passive. I don't have to talk much about that. The other way you can run her, okay, is on Count. Alright, on a Bulwark set. Why is that? Because Count gives you an extra 1200 attack to start with for 2 turns and gives you Life Leech, which is converts 10% of the damage dealt into your own HP. So if she nukes for 50k, you're gonna get back 5. Right? That is pretty damn good. I think that's pretty good because she now self-sustains. Don't forget that her S3 cuts her HP to do damage. And then you replenish it by yourself. So you become more of an independent damage dealer. Alright? This also stops people who don't bring strippers to, you know, CC Hoyan, so they, without a doubt, they are forced to eat an S2 regardless. And if Hoyan manages to wrap around and proc count first before, you know, before procking the S2 where she dies, she's gonna get a massive attack boost, lifesteal, and just ruin your day. And she's gonna continuously bring that into her S2 when she dies. Alright? So there is an argument to run either count or Law of Silence, depending on how you draft. Now I prefer to play her with healers and stuff like that, and so she doesn't need to be an independent unit. She relies on her teammate. But I can also see that you would run her on count instead of Law of Silence. But those are the two ways that you can build her. Your set, you're just going to run her on a DPS set. I don't have to talk much about this. I'm running her on Onslaught. You can run her on Keen Eye. You can run her on whatever the fuck you want. Anything works on her, as long as you get that damage super high. Okay? I've seen people run her on Bloodbath. Okay? Because people try to nuke her down, try to, you know, proc the passive as soon as possible on, you know, the least favorable unit. And she doesn't die. And then now they're entirely screwed because now they're forced to eat an S3 out of her and an S2 on, you know, whoever she likes, basically. So that is how you build her. Okay? She's quite simple to build. She's very, very important. She's a very, very good answer to counter cleave. She's a very good single target damage dealer. Her S1 putting wound is super important as well. Don't forget this, especially when you start going into a bruiser meta where people care about healing a lot more. Putting wound on, you know, their DPS means that their DPS is a lot more susceptible to dying because they can't heal. Okay? Now, that is all I can really talk about Hoyan. I'm gonna run a couple of RTA videos at the end here just so you can see how I use Hoyan. If you haven't checked out that video where I went through, you know, my entire analysis on the video, I'm gonna leave it up here right now. But without further ado, let's jump into the video and I'll catch you guys next time.
砕かれた夢が叫んでいる。一緒に耳を傾けて。